What is up, guys? Today's video I'll be giving my personal opinion on a topic. I called it the illusion of female oppression. The idea that there is somehow a patriarchy conspiring against women, even in today's age, the 21st century. I will be critiquing that idea. So where do I start? Where to begin? There's a lot to say, honestly. Men are in reality not as united as women, this is my opinion. If you see patterns all across, it starts from nature. Go watch any nature documentary about sexual species, and how for the most part, males of the species are in intense fierce competition for the three basic needs for an organism. Food, shelter, and the last one. Mates.
Eager to claim mares of their own. For Phyllis, it's an opportunity to see how strong these bands truly are.
The Gruyot is Jupiter, the gray, and he is tormenting the band stallion Knight, who's a roan, and he's keeping the bachelor away from his mares. He's positioning himself in between them. It's getting a little more serious. I can tell you, Knight will not back down. He will fight to the end for that Palomino. When the stallions confront each other, you almost know what's going to happen just by watching their eyes, watching their ears. And here we go. Oh, ouch. And we got another band stallion getting in the mix. Other bands are getting drawn into it. The band stallions don't know where to go because they're being challenged from all different.
It's rutting season, and males are competing for the right to mate. Rank is constantly reinforced and often contested. Their ultimate weapons are their curled horns that can weigh up to 30 pounds. They are literal battering rams. In spring, 2-week-old ram lambs will begin to butt heads in mock battles. In the early development of a social order they will be part of for the rest of their lives. Most of the year, these rams live in bachelor groups that adhere to a rigid hierarchy largely determined by age and size. Their life has a singular focus, and this is what they've been preparing for all year long. A male can determine if a female is ready to mate simply by smelling her urine. He takes in her scent by tilting his head back, so her pheromones can reach a sense organ in the roof of his mouth. Females are in estrus for just 48 hours. Out the window in a head-to-head fight. So his goal is to separate the female from the higher-ranking male. Just long enough to mate. In these early years, it may be his only chance.
By the way, off topic, but for those of you who haven't watched my videos, I use AI voice changers, and I consider myself an average Joe. As mentioned in my overview, my introduction to everyone, I will call these biological flaws. Anyways, no matter how much we pretend to be removed from nature, nature seems to always drag us along, pulling the invisible strings. What did nature for the most part make males? To guard/protect the female and their offspring and provide the resources. Basic simplified concepts, right? Of course, some animals don't even care about their own offspring, but in some such as ourselves it seems to be the evolutionary path drawn for us, and with money being essentially a replacement for gathering resources, I think, it's my opinion of course, but I think that most women never loved men, like truly, they just tolerated them, to survive, a means to an end. What happens when women get to make their own money? Well, the results you see for yourselves in dating apps. In real life, women are selectors, and they are more picky than men. I've noticed how when I was a kid I used to hear like, "Oh my god, men have such impossible beauty standards." And now I hear the opposite, that men will get in bed with any woman who lets him. So which one is it? Are men picky or are they not? Barely anybody mentions the impossible beauty standards placed on modern men. Take a look at which prototype gets the A-list celebrity status in media. The gym influencers abusing steroids to quote-unquote mog one another. To me, this is one of many examples of our animalistic male competition with each other. Which is why I said, we have never been united. Men will complain about modern women but fail to realize that it is partly our own collective fault. This is why I care about such a topic, because it affects me too. Whenever someone asks me why I care so much, there's your answer. Men's collective decisions affect the individual. Also, at near of a quarter century old, I realize, well, you see, most people are actually kind of selfish. The empathetic ones are rare. But most people don't want to openly admit they're selfish because it will lead to people hating on them, which means getting kicked out of the herd, or in our case, the tribe. A man will pretend to be some other man's friend, and when that man's girlfriend presents an opportunity, he'll gladly betray his friend, or even if she doesn't initiate, he'll gladly try to swoop. This is not me projecting. In fact, this has never even happened to me. I just like reading history and random facts from time to time. Go ahead and do the same, and you'll be shocked at how many feuds between men started over women. I can gladly with confidence say that most of these so-called incels, or misogynists, would gladly abandon their thinking if some woman they found attractive were to approach them. So the so-called manosphere is just a reaction, in my opinion, to women's modern actions. What I do hate though is how you can't even point out some facts without being grouped in with some of these guys. For example, Tate. What does he basically teach? That you're nothing, and if you want quote-unquote love or to be loved, you need to be a worthy man. That is not love, the fuck. That is conditional BS, and if you need money to attract women, I don't think that's genuine. A common excuse is that is their nature. Well, in that case, it's a biological flaw. 80% of men are considered unattractive. That's a commonly spread stat. Could be true, could be even higher, I think. If this is indeed their collective nature, then we'd be better off not getting into relationships. You're basically fooling yourself into believing an idea that does not really exist. For actual facts, what does a man need a woman for actually? If he doesn't want kids? Serious question. Feminists often boast how men are not needed anymore, and are essentially expendable and useless, thanks to sperm banks for example, and men gladly working society's most dangerous jobs and thinking that is the manly way of life. Are they not actually being exploited? What if men decided to stop working those jobs? What if the plumber decided not to show up to a female client's house? The mechanic? Etc. Etc. Would a lot of these modern women continue to brag about how they don't need no man? How useful are quote-unquote women's beauty, women's looks in a collapsed society? I live in the US. All I have to do is stare out into the street and see how the overwhelmingly majority of those without homes, the homeless, are men. Left to rot, viewed in the same way you view a street rat or street pigeon, they become background noise. Background noise, just like how society expects men to be. The stoic never complains, never voices his frustrations, his pain, an emotionless robot that the elite are looking to replace you with, by the way. This is how society has attempted to mold men, forgetting that we are human, with biological flaws, as I keep repeating. As I mentioned in my previous video, it wouldn't be a biological flaw if we were not self-aware, if we didn't have the capacity to cry. The fact that we do is salt rubbing on the wound. That society despises what it deems as weak men, it seems not to be the so-called patriarchy's doing, but rather something else. The fear, the unspoken fear of knowing that if men stop trying, society collapses. That's why it tries so hard to push a certain ideal of masculinity, despite the fact that, well, technically if you're biologically a male, you're a man, period. So why all these terms to attack those who seem to go astray? Is it a form of social shaming, a form of peer pressure to get a man to act a certain way? It is. There is no denying it. Somehow we're all equal, until military conscription gets brought up in most parts of the world. Somehow equality dies whenever wartime occurs. But men start all wars. That is a common lie I see spread around, despite the fact that women were 27 times more likely to start wars throughout history. And that, my friends, is why I believe that so-called female oppression is a myth. They are in fact sheltered from nature. While men are for the most part in do or drown situations, women do not have high expectations on them, nor face equal societal shared burdens. But enough about history and nature, let's talk about the current time period. The 21st century. I will focus on one topic. Pop culture. Women dominate modern pop culture, period. There is no way around this fact, no denying it. As you can see in 2025, 58% of art directors are female and 42% are male. How about the fact that most universities now have more women than men, which means more women are quote-unquote highly educated, compared to men? Some will say that college degrees are useless, that you do not need one. I kind of agree but also disagree. Because why else would elite families keep sending their children to prestigious universities? I'm not saying diploma mills don't exist, or that all degrees are equally useful. I'm simply bringing up that question. Could it be that the ideal social push is for men to work the hard, unthanked, grueling labor, while women are in air-conditioned offices? What's going to happen to those men when they reach 40 and have lifelong chronic issues like back pain? They'll probably have their partners leave them, while they go on with a new man by the end of the week. This is all despite the fact that women are complaining en masse how their male partners are supposedly overgrown children, who expect a new mother. I wouldn't doubt there's some men out there like that. But what about the men who work society's most physical jobs and then go home to hear their nagging partners complain how they're not doing enough chores around the house? Like seriously, for any guy who may watch this, use your brain and form the patterns. What are considered society's quote-unquote manly jobs? Look up the stat of which gender makes up most of the workplace fatalities. I often say this, society is built by men, but it is absolutely not for men, despite what these feminists have been claiming. You thought human resources was imbalanced? Let's look up the demographics of casting directors. The people interested in such a career are 51% male, 49% female, but in actuality only 26% men are working in said career versus 74% women. Alright, let's look up which gender makes up most of the actors in the US. Fashion designer. Who's designing the clothes you wear? Photographer? Surely this one is more equal, right? This one is a little baffling. There are clearly way more men interested in becoming architects, yet the ones actually in the field are less than women. 45% versus 55%. Apparently similar results for clowns. And on and on and on, except on a few remaining fields. The point is, it's bad. Not all men should be blue-collar, because we all consume media, and arts and culture are a reflection of us as a society. They're supposed to represent us, but when it skews too far to one side and neglects the other's lives don't feel much of any importance. How often in modern media are men relegated to the goofy clown, the useless deadbeat dad, incompetent, weak, etc., while men are the overwhelming amount of musicians in today's era? It seems like the biggest pop stars, the biggest music stars in general of this era are women. It's just my opinion, of course, but like in marketable position, streams, I think the biggest stars are female. I don't feel a connection with Billie Eilish, Dua Lipa, Taylor Swift, etc. Anyways, my opinion is that the 2020s and women dominating arts and culture is bad. Because culture is used to push certain ideologies and narratives more easily, you can use your influence to reach a widespread audience. By the way, just of curiosity, I'll look at HR demographics. One of the biggest imbalances in modern corporate culture is the human resources department. In 2025, the people interested in human resource management careers are 47% male, 53% female, but the actual gender mix is 22% male, 78% female. An ideal future for some people seems to be keeping the majority of men working the unthanked jobs. A select few elite are obviously exempt, while the women get all the cozy air-conditioned offices, the gatekeepers of culture and arts, while the men are busy working long hours, returning home to help cook and clean around. Maybe I'm just overthinking, but I don't know. By the way, I've talked long enough, you probably got tired of hearing it, so I'll just show this website I stumbled upon. I mean, it's just a gold mine for the points I've been stating.